Hello everyone, my name is Lucy Williams and I just completed my internship for Winged Hope based here in Gilbert, Arizona. I learned so much over the last couple months and hope to be able to share that with you all today. Winged Hope is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on volunteer work in order to function properly. This means everyone from the founder to the president to even me, the current intern, is unpaid, but that also leads to a very selfless group of individuals that are there solely to help build up a family and stop abuse here in Gilbert, Arizona. They've received many awards for this, and I'm so glad that they have because it is well merited. They provide direct victim services to help survivors get the help and resources that they need to heal. This would include anything from sending the police over to get them out of the abusive situation as fast as possible. This also might include sending them to the court to properly get an OOP or an order of protection so the abuser can no longer have contact with them legally. This might include them getting a new apartment so they can get a fresh start. They might send them to therapy to help them to help pay for it for the first couple months. That way they get a head start on the healing process, and they even might call child protective services if that is needed in the situation. But they also want to prevent the abuse before it starts. And so they give free training and education to the school systems, the hospitals, and the police departments in our area regarding abuse and trauma. This is often where abuse happens or is best noticed, especially by teachers if they see their student if they're trained in how abusive, in what abuse might look like, then they are better able to get the children the help that they need. And in hospitals, regrettably, there is more abuse there than we realize, and we hope to be able to train doctors in recognizing when one of their coworkers might be the abuser and to stop that where possible. And police departments need to be properly trained as they are on the front lines trying to stop the abuse before anyone else can even get there. And so they really try and do the most good by focusing on domestic violence and child abuse in these trainings and in these direct victim services. My role in this company was mainly data entry, handling donations, and just giving overall support. On my first day, I was handed 28 months worth of unfinished paperwork that I needed to fill out and properly input. And this was understandable as the president and the other advocates they're focused on other things. They're focused on being with the people and helping them receive comfort and care, and really being on the front lines and focusing on each person. That means that they aren't often inside at a desk doing the paperwork for it when they could be out helping people. And so I was able to complete that for them as much as I could while I was there, and I was really glad that I was able to help them with that. I also handled donations, which meant that when people needed new clothing, or they needed their bill paid for, or they needed even new furniture, a new bed would mean a great deal for these women sometimes. I was often called upon to take them these things and make sure that they were well settled and doing okay. I often had a supervisor with me, but sometimes I even did it alone, and I had to be their support system, which leads me to my next point, where I just needed to offer emotional support to any victims that I came in contact with. I needed to be a comfort for them, especially in their hard times. I needed to be able to listen to them and be aware of what they're going through and be very sensitive to those situations. And I also needed to provide a little bit of office-wise support, which included installing a new internet system even, which doesn't sound quite important regarding abuse, but I wanted to be able to do it that way. Our advocates could spend their time with the victims and do their best work. I hope that I benefited them as much as I could by doing 3 different things, in my opinion. I completed a full year's worth of data entry within the first month of working there. It took quite a bit of time and quite a few hours alone in the office just trying to get all that paperwork in and ready to be submitted to the donors. But I was able to do it, and I'm not done yet, and so hopefully I'll be able to get through all 28 months of that. I was able to help move the entire donation supply to another nonprofit better equipped to handle and distribute it, because at one point we just had piles and piles of clothing that were just sitting there and not helping anyone. And so we decided to delegate it to someone else who was able to more quickly get it out to where it needs to go, and then the clothing could then help those who most needed it. And I think the most important one, and the one that I enjoyed most, was being able to talk to both members and non-members about the family and the proclamation to the world, and how important the Savior is in the healing process. There were many times where there were deep conversations about the process of healing and what we have all been through and how we've all healed from it. And I was able to share that the Savior is the most important part of the healing process, and that He is the only one to be able to offer complete healing. And I was glad that I was able to share that testimony where I could. I hope I benefited them by bringing the Spirit to the office where I could. And I also benefited from being here in more ways than one, but I will probably just address this one where I was able to shadow different occupations and learn what it takes to be, in this case, 3 different things that all are very vital in the process of getting someone safety. So the first one that I was able to witness was I was able to go to the court system with the victim, and I was able to see what it's like to have her testify, see the operations of the courtroom, see what was normal to go on, and see the professionalism there and how the policies are applied to each individual. I was really glad that I was able to witness that and learn more about that. I also was able to shadow an advocate, especially one of the presidents of Linked Hope. Her name is Joyce. She would often kind of include me in certain advocacy moments, and she would pause and turn to me and role play with me how I would handle the situation. And I was able to receive amazing training from that, and she was so uplifting, and I was so glad I was able to work with her through that. At one point, I actually went to the police department and shadowed the chaplain of the police to give CIT training. They were drilled in what to do in situations with mental illness like autism, PTSD, suicide, and schizophrenia. These are all illnesses that we learn about in our textbooks, but the police officers are the ones who work with it on the front lines, and they also needed the training, and so I was able to witness that. And it was quite educational. I realized that doing something a little bit different can make a situation go a whole different way, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. So we need to be prepared for anything that might happen and know what to do for each individual situation. As regarding connections to the coursework, I first want to mention that I noticed there were different skills needed for different fields. At one point, I approached advocacy like a therapist, as I was trained to do in a few courses. And Joyce was so kind, and she mentioned that there were great differences between what an advocate does and what a therapist does. A therapist goes more into the psychology and the mental illness of trauma and abuse, but the advocate goes more into the problem solving and what they need right then and how they can best get a fresh start, which are both very needed. But I learned this in many different situations, and overall I learned that these are the different skills that different professions need from what I've seen. An advocate needs problem-solving skills and networking skills, where they're able to direct each victim to the thing that they need most at the time. They're able to send them to the court system, send them to a new apartment. They're able to get them in touch with a shelter or a support group. They know exactly what they need, or at least offer them what they think they might need best at that time. The therapist is more one-on-one, little bit at a time where they just sit them down, and as you all know this, they need interpersonal skills where they dive deeper into the actual effects of trauma on the psychology of a person, and those require very different skills than an advocate. The police officer required more leadership, crisis intervention skills, and being able to cope with more intense situations. An advocate doesn't need quite as an intense, they don't experience quite as much anxiety, and a therapist is often more of a safe environment, but a police officer might be witnessing the abuse themselves, and so they need to be able to have the skills to cope with that themselves. An educator, I speak specifically of the person on our board member who goes and does the training for the hospitals, the schools, and the police departments. They needed to have very good presentation and public speaking skills. They needed to be able to convey a message, even to the point where at the end of each of her educations or trainings, she had many people coming up and saying, hey, I'm going through this abusive situation. And that wouldn't happen if she didn't have the public speaking skills. And finally, a lawyer needs the policy and the professional skills to be able to work with the law and even change the law if need be. I know that there's one policymaker on our board where they're trying to lengthen the punishment for certain abusive situations. As of right now, it's not nearly as long as they would like it to be, and the abuser is often out of the prison system before the trauma can really be healed. And so they're trying to lengthen that, and the way to do that is by focusing on policy, which means you don't quite work with the abusers as often. You don't quite work with the survivors of the victims, but you work with the law and the textbook and the judges and the senators to make sure that the system is the most supportive that it can be. So I was really enlightened with how different these professions all are, and how different skills can help the each different person. And so I would really encourage all of you to join Winged Hope. I know it's based here in Gilbert, Arizona, which might be far away for some of you, and I am aware that it is unpaid, and that is a little bit of a deterrent, especially for someone of our financial standing. But I was so glad that I found Winged Hope. I was able to find them through a family friend, as my mom was a friend of one of the board members, and she connected me, and they instantly welcomed me as a part of their team. And these are some of the most loving people that you will ever work with. They are also on your side. They would constantly talk with me about what I needed, and I actually asked her before doing this presentation, and she said that if anyone wanted to do an internship there, they just need to contact the email shown on the screen or even visit the website there. And they're very open and flexible about what they would provide for an intern. If you want to work with advocates more, or if you want to work more with victims and do more of the therapy side, then that's possible. If you wanted to do more data entry with me, or like I did, then that's also possible. They are connected to so many different organizations, and they are an amazing asset to have. And so I hope that you guys have learned a little bit about Winged Hope, and I'm so excited to be able to share that with you. So thank you so much.